predominant paradigm in this country is the government would never do something as outrageous as kill its own president. But there's other paradigms out there.
We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
There was interest growing that the Warren Commission had gotten it wrong.
The role of the media is frightening.
Our real history has been stolen from us. One reporter was worth 20 agents.
But if you want a democracy, you have to make it a democracy. And the first step is to take back your history.
And as you can see, clearly, the head is thrown violently backwards, completely consistent with a shot from the front, right.
That's the most upsetting thing I've ever seen.
There was indeed a shot fired from the grassy knoll.
Probably killed as the result of conspiracies.
The news item of the century, just now for the sports.
The Secret Service, the day that they were supposed to turn in their materials, they destroyed them.
That's for real.
I shouted out, who killed the Kennedys? When after all, it was you and me.
This was a coup d'etat.
If you want to live in a democracy, you have to solve the Kennedy assassination. Assassination.
I welcome this kind of examination.
We came,
and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build.
A new world order. New world order.
we saw.
If suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe.
Always talk to you like they're the boss.
And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House!
He died. He died.
But that's a wicked woman.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
You can keep it. Period. They are the focus of evil in the modern world. It's a catastrophe.
Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome.
This is the Midnight Rider News Podcast. Hello, America and the world. Welcome to the Midnight Rider News Show. I'm St. Patrick, your friendly neighborhood host, traipsing through the trials and travails that have so tempestuously and untruthfully been blasted into your eyes, ears, and minds by the state-sponsored talking heads, court historians, and textbook conglomerates that control information today. Tonight we have episode 009, The Searchers. Our guest is my friend Randy Benson, the writer, producer, and director of the new documentary film, The Searchers. It can be purchased via a special link at midnightridernews.com and thesearchersfilm.com. But first, a little cleaning of the castle. Again, we'd like to thank everyone across America and around the world. Thank you for downloading the show. We're amazed every day to see where you're downloading from, the states and the countries. It's an amazing experience just to watch all the statistics alone, and these statistics are you, so thank you very much. For all those who have asked, I'm in Illinois. And now, I've noticed that we've had some downloading from nearby St. Louis, Missouri, as well as the Illinoisan cities of Chicago, Springfield, and Champaign. So, hey, if you're from this wretchedly poor and fiscally irresponsible state that we call home, please email us and say hello at midnightridernews.com, or that's midnightridernews@gmail.com. Also, if you're from elsewhere and would just like to say hi, please feel free to email us also. And as always, we're more than happy to take questions for our future guests, so please send them in via email. Tonight, we have Randy Benson. Now, let me tell you a little bit. He's the cinematic mastermind behind one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. I told Randy this. I had an amazing experience watching The Searchers the first time, then have continued having amazing experience watching it over and over and over. I've seen it 5 times now. I've always been a fan of documentary filmmaking, and especially of a 1976 work called Harlan County, USA. And gosh, I can't even believe it's been 41 years. Wow, that's amazing. Harlan County, USA is about a coal mine strike in southeastern Kentucky, which is a neighboring state of mine here in Illinois. I'm also from coal country, or what used to be coal country. The population of my own hometown has fallen 20% since the fall of the coal industry in the early 1980s, so I understand what it does to a town. I understand what it does to a people, and I understand what it does to that sort of lingering spirit of despair that in many cases never leaves the county, day or night. Harlan County, USA was a story of a county 4 or 5 hours from my own, but in essence it was the story of my home as well. I knew those people. No, really, I know those people. In many ways, they are me, and they will always be me. In The Searchers, Randy Benson has created a documentary that is another mirror into my life. While it seems like the study of assassinations, conspiracy, alternative history is a huge field, and in many ways it is, it's also often quite a lonely and isolated experience. You may find your cohorts and compadres at conferences. However, in your own little space of the world, you're probably surrounded by those who cannot wait to see that whimsical local meteorologist has to say 3 times a day. And they just can't wait to watch The Voice. And don't worry, they won't miss it. The season pass is set in stone on DVR. And maybe they like the History Channel documentaries, right? Because they like history. And after all, it has to be true because it's on the History Channel, right? Fighting the mainstream is not easy. Randy Benson has documented the people that fought the mainstream, many as early as November 22nd, 1963. Randy has documented Josiah Thompson, John Judge, Mark Lane, Dr. Cyril Wecht, Robert Croton, Walt Brown, Deborah Conway, Jim DiEugenio, Jim Mars, Lisa Pease, Dr. Gary Aguilar, Rex Bradford, Andy Winarchik, Vince Salandria, Sylvia Marr, Harold Weisberg, Mae Brussel, and Penn Jones Jr. He's documented them all, and without knowing it, Randy has documented me. Like the miners and wives of Harlan County, USA, I feel a sort of kinship and shared experience with The Searchers. They are me, and I hope that they are you. We'll be right back with Randy Benson. So I have to first send thanks and a shout out to Rob Clark, the former host of the Lone Gunman podcast. Rob is responsible for facilitating my meeting Randy, so hey, thanks Rob. And if you'd like to hear all the episodes from the Lone Gunman podcast archives, you can go to www.spreaker.com/thelonegunman. That is www.spreaker.com/thelonegunman. Now Rob's a great guy and his show is really strong, so check out the archives. Now, Randy Benson, the director, producer, and editor of The Searchers, has garnered numerous awards, most notably an Academy Award for Best Student Documentary at the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences Academy Awards. Benson received an Eastman Kodak Excellence in Filmmaking Award at the Cannes Film Festival and a First Appearance Award at the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. He's been an instructor of film and video at the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University for over a decade, and he serves on award juries at the Full Frame Documentary Film Festival in Durham, North Carolina, as well as the Let's All Be Free Film Festival in London. So he's quite accomplished. We're happy to have him here tonight. So Randy Benson, thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thanks so much, SG. I appreciate it.
Hey, so let's start at the beginning. When and how was your interest in the JFK assassination sparked?
Well, like so many other people in our generation, it was with the movie JFK. After seeing that film, I was embarrassed and surprised and shocked that I didn't know so much about our history. I didn't know about all the documents being locked away for all those years. I didn't know that there had even been a trial in the Kennedy assassination. So that really got me researching the case just on my own to figure out what else I didn't know.
So tell me about the origin of the Searchers project itself. So how did the idea first come to you? When did the project begin? And when did you decide upon the title?
Well, a lot of my previous work has been portraits of individuals who do jobs that are important in society, but that no one wants to think about. And specifically, one of my films was called Man and Dog, and it was a portrait of an animal control officer in a small North Carolina county. So I've always been interested in portraits of individuals who are kind of pushed to the margins and ignored, mocked, or ridiculed, who do important jobs. So when the more I learned about the JFK assassination, one of the main questions that kept popping into my mind was, who are the people that are finding all this information? Who are these people? And that's just, it was that question that set me on the path to find out who these people were. Read as many books as I could get my hands on. And since I was in film school at the time, I was getting as many videos as I possibly could, taping everything that came on TV, and the main question that kept going over and over in my head was, who are these people? So then, and the common theme was, in regards to the title, the common theme was that these are the people who are digging and finding the truth behind our hidden history. These are the people who are uncovering, searching for files. They're responsible for the 6.5 million pages that have been released. It wasn't the media, it wasn't our fourth estate, it wasn't mainstream academia, historians. It was just average people spending their free time, spending much of their lives doing a job that no one else obviously was willing to do.
So you were inspired by the Oliver Stone project, JFK, but at what point did you actually begin the project?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, the seeds of this project began right after I saw the movie JFK. But I let me see, in the fall of 2001, I felt like this is something I have to do. And but I knew nothing about it other than just what I'd read. I didn't know anything about the community. I'd met no one else who was even interested in the topic. Only what I could find online. So I got online and found out that, lo and behold, there were conferences in Dallas, Texas. So I flew down to Dallas, and in the fall of 2001, I went to the JFK Lancer conference. They had a really robust internet presence, and I tell you, it was a great introduction to someone like me at the time. I really knew nothing about the case other than the broad stroke introductory stuff. But it was a great entry. People were welcoming. It was an academic conference, but you got to hang out in the book room or in the restaurant and get in conversations with people. And if you've ever been to any of these conferences, that's the best place to really learn about stuff, just hanging around the restaurant, talking to other people. And at the same time, I was told that there was another conference going on across town, and I went over there and checked them out, and that was COPA, Coalition on Political Assassinations, led by John Judge at the time, and Bill Kelly, Mike Nurko, T. Carter. And that's really what kicked it off. I met people, and it gave me a point of reference for really specific research. I knew specifically who to read, what papers to find, all of that kind of stuff. And then in the summer of 2002, June the 10th, I drove up to D.C. I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. And I drove up to D.C. and filmed Copa's and John Judge's reading of JFK's peace speech at American University, the site of the speech. I shot the first frames of the film on June 10th, 2002, and I officially wrapped 14 years later. And I was talking to my wife about this not too long ago, that my life making this film has really paralleled the life of so many researchers in some small way. I mean, over the course of making this film, my wife and I got married. My mom died and had to bury her, and then my dad died and I had to bury him, and then we had kids and bought a house and got a dog and dealt with illnesses and recovery, and and all the while the books I was reading all through that time would be something pertaining to the JFK case. or every single day, at some point, I would think about the case. I would think about the film. And I think that was a really good lesson for me. I don't think a film like this, an honest film like this, could be made in a year or two. I think for me, it had to be a long, long-term chunk of my life.
Now, you and I had very similar experiences in that once we found the case, we read everything we could get our hands on. Do you remember the first JFK assassination book that you read?
Oh, absolutely. The very first one I read, and this was after seeing the film Rush to Judgment. I read Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment, and I just couldn't believe what I was watching and then what I was reading. And and the evidence, what struck me was that it was so flimsy. The one report, the evidence upon which they hung all of their conclusions was so easily torn apart. And I really appreciated Mark Lane's investigative style. It read like a thriller. And then not long after that, I read 6 Seconds in Dallas by Josiah Thompson. And then, but in recent years, the book I think it's my personal favorite book on the entire case, and that's Jim Douglas's JFK and the Unspeakable.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic work.
It's just a great book, whether you're interested in the case or not. But one thing I really appreciated about that book is that it leaves you with a sense of hope. That the big lesson from that we should all take from the JFK case is that at the moment of greatest stress in this country, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the two adversaries chose to work together in peace. And then at our darkest moment, it was actually the beginning of a true peace and what could have been a lasting peace. And I think that's a great lesson for us all,
Randy, you shot the searchers all over America. Why did you choose to shoot in so many locations?
Well, since the film was a portrait of individuals, I felt like I had to go to where they were. I had to go to Boston, and I had to go to LA and San Francisco and Marin County and everywhere else, Pittsburgh. I wanted to be in their own spaces. I wanted to watch them just living their lives, just doing what they do in their own space where they're most comfortable, because I was really not necessarily focused on the case, but I was focused on them. And I think people were able to open up much more, and they felt comfortable talking about themselves. In many cases, they had never been asked about themselves. And, that's one reason, yet another reason it took so long to make, just because getting funding was very difficult.
It seems like you had great experiences with all the researchers in the film. But was there one who surprised you most? And was there one who you would leave and just think, wow, that person is amazing?
Well, that happened more than once. But it was in different ways. Spending a day with John Judge was awesome, and the fact that he only lived 3 hours away, I repeated that a number of times. And sometimes I wouldn't even need an interview with him, but I'd lie to him and say I needed to get more stuff, and he'd say, "Come on up." And I'd just hang out with him in his car while he did errands, listening to his stories. I mean, the guy was just a wealth of information. I mean, he knew the specifics of almost every post-World War II deep state event. He knew everything about.
I want to ask you about John Judge, actually. He, in my opinion, is the one person who just absolutely jumped through the screen throughout the film. He was magnetic, Randy. And for those who may not know him, could you tell us a little bit about who he was, what he meant to the community of JFK assassination researchers, and how you think he will be remembered?
Well, I think his biggest strength and what drew most people to him And it was that he was a force that would not be stopped. He walked the walk. He didn't just talk the talk. The guy wasn't just involved in the Kennedy assassination. He did so much work with, during Vietnam. He was part of the Winter Soldier movement, helping returning soldiers integrate back into society, get back into their lives, and also helped create forums where they could talk about their experiences so they could get it out, so they could move on with their lives. And he helped them get the benefits they had been promised. That's a little piece of history that John was well aware of, that not a lot of people knew, that the United States government was denying a lot of those returning vets their benefits. And so it was people like John that he had researched the ways to help them get their benefits. And then he did counter-recruitment in the Washington, D.C. schools when at job fairs in high schools or in small colleges, community colleges. Whenever the military was allowed to come in and make their pitch, John won a court case that allowed him to be able to speak as well. And he would give the counter recruitment speech, telling people in from difficult economic situations that there were other ways that they could go to college. They didn't have to go to the military. They wanted to see the world. There were other ways that they could go. But that the military wasn't their last chance, their only hope. And he was heavily involved in the anti-nuke marches and protests in the 80s. He just put himself in every situation to do the most good throughout his life. He never stopped, and I think it took a heavy, heavy toll on him. And I think after the 50th, in 2013, he was wiped out. He was really, really exhausted. And I think that he had some health issues leading up to that, and I think he made it to the 50th, and I think his body just gave out.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happened too, Randy. So one of the more exciting scenes in the film concerns the last hurrah. What is the last hurrah?
Well, I tell you, I shot the last hurrah bookshop. That was almost for the research community, because I knew that very few people had been to Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So for the people who don't know about it, it's Last Hurrah Bookshop is the resource for books and videotapes on deep politics events, especially the political assassinations of the 60s. It's run by Andy Winarchik, who is the nicest guy you could ever meet, a bookworm, and that his shop in Williamsport, PA, is just in a house on a nondescript little street, but it's 4 stories, 3 stories and a basement, just filled with books, ceiling to floor to ceiling. And if you ask him, I'm looking for the 1965 edition of Rush to Judgment, the one with the weird cover, he'll be able to go right to it. He'll go down into his basement, down all the, so I felt I needed to interview him for just basic content, because no one could speak better about the number of books on the assassination and why there's so many books and kind of the broad stroke topics.
All right, Randy, so now I have to know, what was the tally at the end of the day that you spent at the last hurrah?
Oh, well, this is a funny story, because, I was on a budget, and, I had to drive up there and with my cameraman and, get a hotel and pay for, horrible highway food and all that stuff.
Right.
So I promised myself I would buy one book.
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2. But I ended up coming home with a stack of books.
That's what I.
Because who would have thought he would have all the Penn Jones Forgive My Grief series?
Right.
Affordable. But I also, what was interesting, and this is kind of the funniest part.
Okay.
He had purchased off in the state a 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano.
What?
And he had it, and I was like, I certainly didn't think I would end up purchasing a Mannlicher Carcano.
Randy.
But it was just right up there with him, and I just felt, it would be really interesting to
had to have it.
Take that thing out on a firing range and just feel it for myself.
Absolutely.
And so when I got home from that trip, of course I was wiped out, pulled up into the driveway,
right.
And my wife came out and helped me unload, and I handed her, pulled out my camera kit and my tripod bag, and then a rifle bag. And she was like, what is this? I was like, you've never been to the Last Hurrah bookshop. I can't explain it.
Well, it is absolutely on my list of things to do in the next 5 years. I must go to the Last Hurrah. So congratulations on that.
And Andy is a wonderful, wonderful human being. And so knowledgeable, too. I mean, the guy knows everybody, and he knows what they've done, when they did it, why it's important. Just hanging out with him for a day was amazing.
So in the film, you focused a lot on projects as well as authors. Was that a conscious choice that you made?
Projects instead of authors.
Projects like The Last Hurrah, like JFK Lancer, like the Mary Farrell Papers, things like that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Well, this was about I felt like to tell the story of the researchers, I had to tell the story of what they do and of the community and what they've achieved too. So the entire document section, I consider a showcase of their achievements. All those documents are released. We now have, for instance, the Northwoods document because of the researchers. We now have the Hoover document and the Katzenbach memo and all of those things simply because of normal people. And so I felt like to show the fruits of their labor, I had to go to the National Archives. I had to spend time on the Knoll and at the conferences, and because it's a real community. It's one thing I didn't want to make it seem like these are just individuals who are in their own little lairs and never interact. It's the exact opposite. It's a vibrant community of people who get together and interact. Most of it these days, it's online. Very vibrant community, but the conferences are critically important.
In the introduction, I read a list of names of those researchers who were featured in the Searchers. So who were some of the people, or what were some of the projects that you hated leaving out?
Well, to me, the biggest hole was the importance of Len Oceanic and Black Op Radio.
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, and Len is the most humble guy, and he's just created a clearinghouse of information and interviews with people just telling their stories. And, his 50 for 50 series, the video series, it's now the first place I send anyone to who asks me how to get into where do you start?
Oh, I would absolutely agree.
If there was a book, every researcher says Sylvia Mars, Accessories After the Fact.
Yes.
But I send people to Leno Sonic and Black Op Radio, and that 50 for 50 series. And, it just, I felt that if I included in any more people, it would have been just too many individuals for the audience to keep up with. And, I had work in progress screenings with colleagues of mine. They were already saying that they suggested I cut out many more people, but good suggestion, but I decided to stick with what I had. Plus the money, the cost to get up to Vancouver, but every project has an honest regret, and one of my professional regrets, especially with this film, is not being able to include Len and what he does, because he deserves it. He deserves all the recognition.
He absolutely does, Randy. Can you believe he's almost done 900 episodes? That's crazy.
God, think about that. Yeah, and they're not redundant. They're all new and interesting. And I love his interview style too. And that I think that is an indication of the kind of person he is. He's interested in listening to people, and it comes out.
As I was watching The Searchers, I also found myself very fascinated with Walt Brown. So what was his impact on you and on the project in general?
Walt is a really cool guy. He's brilliant, and his work on the case his contributions can't be. I really can't describe the importance in any larger terms. He's a titan. His book, The People versus Lee Harvey Oswald, is bulletproof. And then his most recent work, the master chronology of the assassination. My gosh, he was working on it when I interviewed him in 2007 or 2008, and he just finished a year and a half ago. It's a monumental work, but he's also a really funny guy. And when I asked him about that, how can you stay how can you maintain your sense of humor knowing what you know? And he said, hey, you either laugh or you cry. And crying about it isn't going to do anything. And so, and that's the way he lives his life. He's a really funny guy, and I love that little bit with his dog. His dog snorts whenever the name Posner is uttered.
I think I would too.
He's a little funny thing. When we were there, Vince Bugliosi had sent a copy of his book, Reclaiming History, and it was still on his front porch in the FedEx pouch, and it was covered in leaves and dirt. And he said, "I'll never touch it. I'll never touch it."
That's great.
And the last time I spoke with him, he said, "Yeah, it's still there." and so it's been there for over a decade, probably.
That's fantastic. So the thing about Walt was, it seems like every time he opened his mouth, it was smart and it was important. He was fascinating in that way, right, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. He has such a command. Well, he has a command of language, first of all, but he has a great way of putting everything into lay terms, simple terms for everyone to understand. And the example of that in my film that I love, that really sums up the nature of how to look at this conspiracy in human terms, is when he talks about if he had a daughter and she was murdered, that a cop would say, well, it was one of two things. It was either an insane guy got away from an asylum, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's one of those things that in life it just can't be avoided. It just happened, and it's tragic. Or it was a group of Hell's Angels that attacked her, tortured her, and murdered her. Well, as a parent, you pray that it would be the former, that it would just be the accident, And in terms of the JFK case, Oswald is the accident, and the Hells Angels is the systemic. That's the government. And people want to believe that it was an accident, that it wasn't systemic.
So I'd like to get a general opinion on the state of JFK assassination research now and what you think the future holds. Many of the original searchers that you documented here are sadly now gone. So what do you think the future holds for JFK assassination research, Randy?
Well, I think it's up to us. I think that the next few months are really important. All of the documents under the JFK Records Act are due to be released on October 26th of 2017. So this is, not many people know that this is a very important year in terms of that. And they have to be released, and the release can be stopped only by executive order. So in the short term, this could be a very exciting year, but people, the research community in general is kind of split on what Trump will do. And in the long term, it's critically important for young people to get into the case. And there's some organizations that are doing a really good job with outreach. Lancer has always done a good job. I'm involved with researcher Joe Green and Jeff Worcester and Rich Bartholomew, Leslie Sharp with the Center for Deep Politic Research, and we're trying to build something to help bring young people in. But what John Judge said is right on, that we have to stick together to do this. And, it's so easy for the community to be divided. I've seen it over all of these years. But we have a lot more in common than we do apart. And this is a case that just has to be pursued. Again, I agree with John Judge that if you want a democracy, you have to solve the Kennedy assassination. So, I think in other terms, in other countries, the assassination is still very popular. And young people are getting involved, New Zealand and Australia specifically. And Dealey Plaza UK is doing a really good job bringing young people in. And, at some of my screenings, I've been really surprised at how many history professors have come up to me and said that they teach a course on conspiracy in America. And one of the professors that came up to me at the Orlando Film Festival said, for me, this was one of the biggest compliments anyone in my shoes could get. He said, "You've changed the way I'll teach history just by telling the story of the average people who have done this." And I think in general, people, like Donald Sutherland's character said in the movie JFK, people are suckers for the truth. And the truth is on our side, is on the side of the researchers. And when people have seen my film, I'm not preaching about the case. I'm not my goal was not to throw evidence into their face. I'm trying to tell a simple story of people who are doing this work. And by doing so, you can't argue with showing a person doing his or her work. And it's made it more accessible. And so I think perhaps this could be a template moving forward to get other people, to make it safe and accessible to people who are scared of being called conspiracy theorists.
So where can we see the film and how can we order it?
Well, it's available through my website, thesearchersfilm.com. Right now it's on Vimeo On Demand. It's on Amazon. And I'm selling DVDs as well as box sets of a 20-disc box set with almost 40 hours of footage of the raw, uncut interviews with all the researchers. So, all 2 hours of the King Thompson interview and Gary Hackett, Walt Brown, stuff. So you can just visit the site and go from there. I have a store up and links to how to see it also to future screenings. I'm in the process of lining up screenings around the country and around the world. And in fact, I just learned today that I'll be screening in London, England, sometime of the weekend of September 20th. I'll have those details up on my site, and I'll, of course, let you know.
Congratulations on that, and England.
Yeah.
Hey, will this be up for an Academy Award consideration?
It's, I am open to anything. It's, submission for that won't be till late summer. So I'll make a judgment on that, on how it's doing in festivals and stuff. But, I have a previous film that did well, and it was a short film that actually won an Academy Award. So I'm very hopeful that at least it'll get a look, and that's all you can really hope for.
Will you be speaking at one of the JFK conferences this November?
Well, I spoke at the JFK Lancer Conference last year, and I would love to speak at one of the conferences, or both. There's a lot going on with the film and with the state of research, and with also how the media is open to covering my film, which I didn't expect. But I think once people see it and other works like it, I think people are more open than we might have thought.
Well, this has been Randy Benson, writer, director, producer of The Searchers, and I want to say that I've seen it 5 times, so thank you very much for that, Randy. And I compared it earlier to Harlan County, USA, a documentary that meant a lot to me, and I want you to know that I mean that. It is powerful, it is moving, and it is a picture of those of us who are downloading the show or even hosting the show right now. So thank you very much for that.
Wow, thank you very much. That's a tremendous compliment. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the time.
Randy Benson of The Searchers. Thank you very much, Randy.
Thanks, you too.
I'm S.D. Patrick. This is Midnight Rider News. We'll be right back. In episode 001 of the Midnight Rider News Show, Juliet Toth discussed Lee Harvey Oswald's controversial time spent in New Orleans, and author-researcher Gary Fannin discussed the innocence of Oswald and went so far as to name the Grassy Knoll shooter. Download episode 001 of the Midnight Rider News Show today.
Hi, this is Gary Fannin, JFK historian and author of The Innocence of Oswald. When you want the truth, don't tune into the mainstream media. Listen to my friend S.T. Patrick on the Midnight Rider News podcast.
I would like to once again thank Randy Benson of thesearchersfilm.com. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a must-watch. It's an amazing piece of work that has to be seen to be understood. As I watched The Searchers, it dawned on me that these men and women are not just investigating material. They are not solely writing, reading, and then writing some more. So what is it that these men and women are actually doing? They are interacting with the material. They are taking it and doing something of quality with it. Sometimes I think it's not enough just to read. I often wonder whether it's enough to hear. Sometimes we must do. Many of you are experts in so many of these alternative historical fields. But what are we doing with it? Are we letting ourselves get lost in the left-right, yes Trump, no Trump paradigm that the national media and partisan websites have beaten us over the head with for well over a year? You have the information. You have the knowledge. You have the peace within you that comes from knowing the truth. Now, it's time to act. Let me challenge you to do this. Peruse your last 20 Facebook posts. What are the common themes and topics? Are they meaningful? Could they bring someone closer to the truth? Do not underestimate your value in the movement. Do not underestimate your ability to change minds and thus change lives. Do something, and do it today. It's time for you and I to become searchers ourselves. From the other side of the mountain, on the best side of midnight, I wish you peace.
The Midnight Rider News Show with S.T. Patrick is a production of MidnightRiderNews.com. Copyright belongs to S.T. Patrick and all rights reserved. You can email us at midnightridernews@gmail.com, and be sure to visit midnightridernews.com for the best in alternative historical analysis. This is Leanne saying thank you for listening, have a great night, and always remember, When life throws you lemons, throw them back and demand chocolate.